Hello, everyone. Uh, we are starting module 2. So from here on out, you'll see materials in the module two folder in your course content folder. Since we're moving on to the back half of this 8-week course, today we're going to discuss uh, stadiums and facilities, arenas, sports stadiums and facilities, and other types of entertainment arenas, and how they relate to sport organizations and how they're used for marketing communication to eventually help sport organizations stay healthy and generate revenue and do the things that they need to do. So again, without further ado, I will share my screen here and we will pull up the slides. Should be right here. Slide change. All right, facility management. Obviously, some of the things we're going to cover here in the introduction slide talk about facilities, public assemblies facilities, again, specifically stadiums and arenas and civic centers and things like that. Of course, have to be constructed in certain ways to accommodate large numbers of people, and size and variance depends on, again, uses, budget, the particular market itself. Um, there's different trade organizations like the IAVM that people who work in the facility management industry are part of. Like most professions, there are trade organizations that people who work in the profession belong to, and they come up with guidelines and rules and regulations and share business practices and essentially are trying to find ways to improve operations, improve marketing, improve communications, find ways to continue to attract people into these venues for different things. Uh, Primarily, they're for sports and entertainment uses. So we'll talk about, of course, that's relevant to this course, of course. And so it's important that professionals get together and learn and continue to learn about latest innovations and processes to always stay ahead of the game and continue to be viable and healthy. Sometimes if you get a chance to learn a little bit about the history of the Roman Colosseum, I always talk about that or other things that the Romans did that they built, and even the Greeks, obviously thousands of years ago, when they built facilities really for theater and then for sport. And the Romans, of course, had these large arenas where they would do chariot races, and of course the Colosseum itself was for sports and other kinds of blood sports that we know about, gladiators and all those kinds of things. But essentially, serve the same function, same purposes as stadiums and arenas do now, which is where the citizenry, the people of the town, can go to these places and pay money and go in and be entertained. When you've got leisure time and you're looking for something that entertains you, you buy tickets and you go. And the Romans were, of course, masters of this. If you look at the Colosseum, there are aspects of the facility that are still in use today, whether it be tiered seating or restrooms or seating broken down by class. Those with money and power set in different places than those that didn't. Now they divided men and women in different sort of classes as well then. But the point is, there were still strata between patrons and spectators that went to these arenas, and it's no different now, right? We think of club seats and luxury seats and things like that. So the point is, there's a lot of history, of course. We'll get into a little bit more, but as clear back as then and now, there are ancient practices that are still in use today, because humans are humans, right? We evolve and we change, but when it comes to sports entertainment, there's a lot of things that are remain the same. Of course, there are lots of facilities that have been built in modern times that sort of harken back to being named after facilities of long ago. When baseball, intercollegiate football, and other things started to become popular, and even now we're in a great stadium race, a great arena race, which we'll talk about. Of course, where stadiums are built are restricted or sometimes constrained by the space available, the land and things like that. So, as designers and builders have come up with ways to build stadiums and arenas, they've been creative to fit into sort of urban spaces where it makes sense to do so. And I think that's where you get a lot of the charm and a lot of the appeal of so many modern arenas. And the arenas back in the day, about you have to get creative on where these things are built, and you want to be creative on where these things are built. And of course, early on, when NFL teams started to become popular, of course, for years, baseball was the most popular sport in this country. It's football now, but early on, when the NFL was starting to take a foothold, they would play in baseball arenas. In fact, I remember growing up as a young person, you'd watch football on TV, and many times you could see the dirt infield in there, and that was just part of it. You knew that it was a stadium that was shared by both baseball and football, and didn't seem to be too strange. And we'll talk about the reasons why that doesn't really take place anymore. In the 20s, in hockey arenas, the owners of hockey teams sort of followed the lead of baseball owners and started to build their own arenas to host their teams as early as the 20s, right? I'll emphasize it this chapter. And as we go, of course, if you're an owner of a team, it's always better if you can own your arena too, right? It hasn't always been the case, and still sometimes is not the case. But in major league sports these days, most of the time, ownership groups either own the facility or essentially own it in practice, if not in reality. And we'll talk about that. Oklahoma City is a prime example of that. We'll talk about that arena over there here in a little bit, where the Thunder play. But when you're playing 30, 40 hockey games in an arena, and you've got 365 days a year, you've got to figure out a way to fill empty seats on non-hockey nights. So promoters and owners and facility managers started doing things like hosting boxing nights and matches on some nights. And we'll get into these facility uses, as we go. And other events in here, as you can see here, ice capades and other events that fill empty nights. When basketball started to become popular, the arena sizes were about right, and so arenas started earning revenue from two what we call tenants, right? Basically, two sports tenants that play in the same arena and call it home. Very popular here today. NFL has two teams, teams that play out of the same arena or stadium. Obviously, a lot of hockey teams and hockey teams and basketball teams still do that today in many, many markets, right? It's just efficient. It works out. It's not always logistically convenient. I've seen time-lapse videos where you convert from one event to the next all in one day, and it's pretty fascinating. The guys and gals that do those kinds of things are very, very skilled at that. But again, you're maximizing your arenas. And when you have two tenants in there, that one plays on ice and one plays on hardwood, you've got to be really, really adept at scheduling and conversions and things like that. The modern era, baseball-only stadiums were becoming obsolete during the 60s, right? And there were lots of stadiums because baseball was very popular that were being built, and the primary use, or sometimes even the only use in there, was for baseball. But those baseball-only stadiums were starting to become obsolete when the 60s came along. A lot of it had to do with television and the popularity of football coming on. Owners can make a great deal of money by having their host city build their stadium rather than building them themselves. Again, we'll touch on this as we go, but this is talking about how owners figured out that if you could do partnerships with cities to get public funds to build the stadiums, but you control revenue streams, it's a lot more better in your favor. And again, we'll touch on that as we go here a little bit, but still very, very true today. Lots of these stadiums in the 70s specifically is what these stadiums refer to here in Veterans and Three Rivers and Riverfront Stadium. These are all sort of these cookie cutter models. We don't have that as much now, but back then that was very, very popular. Built these sort of large cathedral-like, Coliseum-like stadiums back in the 70s. Why today, as in back then, would people who were in government, civic leaders, agree to figure out mechanisms to pay for arenas and stadiums to be built with people's money, with tax dollars, is because they think it's good investment added to the quality of life. There's that term again. What's the main purpose of sports and entertainment? Really, entertainment. Sports is part of the entertainment industry. What's the main purpose of it? Is to add quality of life for people who enjoy going to these things and seeing entertainment there. And city leaders again today even understand that, gosh darn it, if we build these kinds of things, not only is it good for business, but ideally it improves the quality of our lives of the residents here. And then the 90s, the trend, the authors are telling us the trend toward one purpose stadiums, again, with soccer specific stadiums. Again, I think the authors were right maybe in the 90s, with soccer, but I don't use soccer specific stadiums. And I know that was a term back then. I like to say maybe soccer centric stadiums. And the reason why they're soccer specific is they were built ideally for the purpose of just hosting a professional soccer team. And so the way you construct it obviously has to fit a soccer field in there. That's when this thinking started going there. Now, as modern arenas are being built, they think about things like hosting soccer matches, and so you have to build them in a way that you can host a full-scale international soccer pitch field in there. So there's still soccer-centric stadiums being built, but I look at this stuff all day, every day, and most of these stadiums that are being built for soccer teams all talk about how they need to be multi-purpose facilities. You can't just play soccer there because, again, depending on what league you play in, there's only 15, 16, maybe 20 soccer games that are going to be held in there, counting playoffs. Maybe you go a little bit more in some friendlies and things like that. It's not very many, right? You have 365 days of the year. You have a soccer stadium sitting there empty most of the days of the year. You've got to figure out a way to build it where that's not the case. Doesn't mean you need to be doing something every night, but ideally, you build it in a way that you can host other things other than soccer. How's technology and relocation of teams impacting stadiums, right? This is important. New technology has created additional revenue streams, like in the Dallas Cowboys AT&T Stadium, although that's an example because everybody talks about it. In all stadiums now, all modern facilities, there's an emphasis on what the authors call second screen viewing. Sometimes it's third screen viewing and fourth screen viewing. You go to an event now and you're sitting in a stadium, and at least at the Dallas Cowboys Stadium and like others, the video system is so large, it's almost like you're watching it in your living room. You're watching a TV in your living room. It's that large. And so, there are different points of entertainment. Obviously, having a Jumbotron screen or a big video screen like that allows us as fans to sort of see instant replay and get a different vantage point. If you're sitting on the end, but you want to see what it looks like from the 50-yard line, the screen will show you how to do that. But obviously, there are revenue generation mechanisms built in that because sponsorships and other things get sold on those things. But with modern stadiums, it's not just about keeping your eyes focused on the field of play anymore, right? It's you got your phone out, you've got your Jumbotron there. They might be showing a promotion on this screen over here. So even though it's second screen viewing, it's really multi-screen viewing these days in modern facilities. And again, there's our lucrative revenue streams associated with this technology. So what the authors are saying here, it's irresistible lure for new owners to say, if we've got a stadium that we want some of those shiny toys like those other teams have, we need a new stadium, or we need more money to upgrade the one that we have. Ideally, they like to build new. And again, we talk about Oklahoma City here in a little bit. And what happens is when these owners go, gosh, dang it, they've got all these modern things, those screens, this particular kind of Wi-Fi network, maybe these restaurants and different ways that increase the experience for people to go to these stadiums. The owner's just like, I need one of those, right? It's human nature to say, I need one of those for my facility. And if you can't get a deal done, or one of the leverage points that they use, of course, to try to get a deal done in their market is say, look, I got to have one of these and you got to help me build it. If not, I need to go where maybe other people are interested in having my team. And it's not maybe what we may think is ethical, but they have that leverage. And some teams get the deal done when cities agree to say, it's important for you for this franchise and this team to stay here, so we'll do it. And other times not. I mean, think about Oklahoma City and the Thunder when they moved from Seattle all those years ago. Seattle said no thanks. Oklahoma City left, Seattle left, came to Oklahoma City, turned into the Thunder. Now there's not been NBA basketball in Seattle ever since then. So it does happen sometimes where some fans or civic people, civic owners or civic leadership, government officials to say, we can't get behind that program. It's not a deal we can endorse. And so teams leave. I mean, look at the Los Angeles Rams that used to be in St. Louis. And even before that, we're in Los Angeles, right? There's many, many examples of teams leaving markets for new markets. And some of that has to do with they get a better deal in a new town. And some of that better deal, what's on the table for the better deal, most of the time has to do with a new facility, a new arena that's being built, right? Um, uh, Sorry, excuse me. Um, So innovations like Levi's Stadium and AT&T Stadium are providing reasons for fans to leave the comfort of their own homes and go out and experience sports the way they were meant to be consumed, live and in person. The point of this this bullet point, is that facility managers are really managers, owners of teams that play in either in stadiums or arenas that they either rent or that they own themselves. We all understand that when fans go to a stadium or arena, there's other revenue opportunities that require people to be there, right? The more people that are in an arena, the more money a team is likely to make. From all the ways we know, we spend money when we go to football games or basketball games or hockey games, on food and beverage or on merchandise or other ways that teams make money from in-stadium sales, parking, obviously the tickets themselves. It requires an audience so that the teams can sell sponsorships, because sponsorships aren't worth anything if there's not eyes and ears there for people to see. And so what I'm saying is arenas as marketing tools have to be such a way that appeals to us as fans enough that is enough to so that we take that call to action, which is get out of our seats, get out of the comfort of our home, and invest time and energy and money into actually physically going to a stadium. It works. Clearly, there are plenty of stadiums that and arenas where thousands and thousands of people go to. And part of it is the excitement of obviously what's happening on the field of play. But it would be less exciting if you were going to this stadium these days, and you think about it, to watch two really, really good teams play in any sport, but yet you're going to a really old stadium that maybe doesn't have jumbotron, doesn't have video technology, you can't get on your phone, doesn't have Wi-Fi, maybe only has two concession stands. So think about it, right? You'd be a lot less likely to go. So modern sports managers and owners understand that the arena is a marketing tool itself. Hey, come here, get out of the comfort of your home, get in your car, spend some gas, drive down here, pay for parking, buy a ticket, come in here, spend money with us. Look at this beautiful new facility we have and all the modern comforts that you need, and you want to be here where the action is. Now, we all want to be part of that communal feeling, right? We want to go where the action is to experience it with other people. But again, think about it in your own mind. You'd be less likely to go if the stadium itself or the arena or the facility in which the event was happening didn't have the things you and I are used to having now. Clean, modern bathrooms, plenty of food and beverage, easy access to it, comfortable seats, all the things. So again, stadium is important. And from a marketing perspective, and owners, stadium designers, stadium builders absolutely understand that. The whole point is to build something that has us take action, get out of the comfort of our own homes and go experience live sports. Right. Obviously we've been talking about arenas, but types of public facilities are arenas, and specifically talking about this screen, arenas refer to anything between, let's say, 2,000 seats and really 20,000 seats that has a roof on it, right? A covered internal arena built to accommodate lots of different sports. Typically, there's one, if not two, prime tenants in the arena. Here in Tulsa, the BOK Center is owned by the city. The two sports tenants there are both called the Oilers. One is a hockey team and one is a football team. There's been other tenants in the past. I worked for the WNBA team that played in that arena years ago. There was a different arena football team that played there, but they call them primary tenants or tenants, right? And so most of the time when arenas are being built, they're being built in a way in mind that, we've got to have at least one primary tenant. And typically, not typically, almost all the time, the primary tenant is a sports franchise of some kind at some in some particular league. Intercollegiate facilities are financed by private donors, endowments, donations. We'll talk more about college facilities, but again, they're built for the same reason, right? To house the colleges, teams that have a sport that play in an arena of this kind. Public owner may manage its own facility or contract out for private management. A couple slides later, we'll show you some of those companies. Very typically, most of the time, the model today is that a city probably, let's say we'll take the Thunder as an example. Paycom Arena, where the Thunder play, it's owned by the city. Technically, it's owned by the city. But the Thunder's a primary tenant and got such a sweet deal that they control all the revenue streams. So even though they don't own it, they control all the revenue streams and they basically act like they own it. But it's managed because basketball isn't the only thing done there, but it's managed by one of these third-party contracting firms that specifically do these things around the country. In Oklahoma City, it's ASM Global. Used to be the manager of the BOK Center. BOK Center is now with a different group called Oakview Group. When that contract came up, they went with that group. But so you have a city-owned facility, private run teams that play in there and sometimes even control it like they own it, but then they're managed by other groups that do that. That's their specialty. And then when there's not basketball or hockey going on, when the primary tenants are playing there, what do? We host concerts and all those kinds of things. And there are people out there specifically filling dates for that. That's typically the arena manager, right? We'll talk a little bit more on that again as we go. Recent trends in facility construction include adjacent practice facilities. I know that's big, right? If you can get the money and pay for it up front, where not only is the team playing in this main arena where the fans come watch, but right next door they get to practice there too, and maybe the front offices, the business offices are there. Obviously, it costs more money to build that, but that's a trend. And I know there's some projects I'm working on where that is exactly kind of what we're talking about. Doesn't always happen. Sometimes you want to maybe practice in another place, especially if there's a city or a suburb that says, no, we want you to practice in our suburb. We want that prestige. Therefore, we'll build you your own practice facility here. Now you just have to commute. You practice in our town, but you play in the main arena in the suburb or next door or the main city next door. So that's also a model. But most of the time, owners would love it if they get to build an arena or a stadium where they practice right there. Typically arenas, right? Practice facilities. I opened up a facility in Broomfield, Colorado in the mid to late 2000s where that's the way it was. We had a hockey tenant and a basketball tenant, built the arena, and they had a practice facility right next door as part of the footprint of the entire building. Stadiums, of course, public facilities, outdoor, think of football stadiums. Some are domed, some are not. Some are open air, some are combo, right? These days, modern technologies, you can retract a roof, right? You can play indoor, outdoor, depending on what the weather is. I kind of like it if it's one or the other, and I prefer outdoor because I think weather ought to play a factor, but that's my personal opinion. Now, if you play in Minnesota, you think otherwise, because again, when you're thinking about these things as marketing tools, you play in Minnesota or maybe in South Texas when it's hot, or in Minnesota where it can be really, really cold. It's hard for people to, and this happens in Lambeau, I guess. It's always really, really cold in Green Bay when they play. It doesn't seem to keep people away, but they're also the Green Bay Packers. If it was maybe a college, and you think, what, we might have trouble attracting people if it's 15 degrees below. So let's build a stadium that we can put a roof on it. And that way we don't have to miss out on people coming because it's too darn cold or too darn hot, right? Again, stadium as a marketing tool. Facility arena as a marketing tool makes a difference. So how they're designed and constructed obviously impacts the bottom line. This is important. Stadium managers try to maximize bookings. It's obviously more difficult in a stadium because they're larger than it is with an arena. There's not a whole lot of the kind of acts or entertainment possibilities that can fill up a stadium. There's obviously a few musicians or bands that can play in stadiums and fill them, but they're not always on tour, and there's not a lot of it. And maybe you can get one or two or three a year, but you've got this big empty stadium sitting there. Now you can do other events in there too that have a smaller crowd, but it's harder to fill them up. Whereas an arena that you can configure in different ways is much more versatile, right? You get smaller crowds, but it's much more versatile in terms of what you can do. Far fewer non-sport events can play in stadiums. Again, concerts and things like that we talked about. And this last bullet point is very, very important. Because you spend so much money into these stadiums and you have to build them where they're supposed to be multi-purpose. What's happened is managers we've had to become increasingly more effective in creating events for venues to take advantage of all available spaces. So even though you might not be doing something on the main field of play, you build a stadium arena where maybe there's something going on in a room of it. Maybe host a business meeting. You might host a convention. You might host a group. You build you might even have a club where people can come eat and hold banquets there. When things aren't actually happening on the field of play. So we've had to get very, very creative and take advantage of spaces and all these available dates. To create events, to fill up dates. Because again, the more people that are coming to your facility, the better it is, because you could generate more revenue. And again, it's a marketing tool, right? Have to get really, really creative. I'm working with a guy right now who's trying to put on a sort of a sports history and music tour around the country. And we'd like these things to be adjacent to sports stadiums. And the place to do that is exactly what this last bullet point says. You put them in the parking lot. There's plenty enough space. I know when the NHL does their All-Star event, and there's so many different other events that you use adjacent parking lots to put a stage on or a fan fest. Very, very important, and you can get creative that way. I mean, sometimes you might even say, hey, nothing to do with us, but I'll rent you the parking lot if a carnival wants to come to town, and that's a way that you get creative to use your facility, even when there's not sports going on there. And so, again, arena managers, stadium managers have had to become creative in that way. Other types of public facilities are convention centers. Even here in Tulsa, the convention center, and definitely the old Cox Convention Center hosts sporting events, primarily amateur events like volleyball tournaments and youth basketball tournaments. So convention centers can be used for sports, but ideally they're used for conventions, whether they be banquets or again, particular kinds of trade organizations that are doing annual gatherings and coming together to raise money or celebrate something, or again, just sort of advance their own industry in some sort of way. So, and when we say public facilities, what we mean is not that they're open to the public, but they are financed. They are built with public dollars, right? They're owned by the public entity, typically a city or a county in that area. So these are the types of things that local governments build, and this is why they do it. Why? To lure conventions and businesses meetings, particular municipality. Think about all the work that goes into it. Why are you trying to lure these conventions or these youth tournaments into your facility? Why? Because the city knows that when people travel, right, it's called tourism dollars. People from out of town come to your state, and what happens? You generate revenue because people are staying in hotels, tax revenue. People are buying gas, sales tax revenue. People go out to eat, sales tax revenue. People go shopping and buy clothes or whatever they need while they're there, sales taxes. And so in luring these kind of events, and you can't do it without an arena or a convention center or a stadium, means that people will travel in, people will spend money, and there's multiplier effects of that money when it comes into market. And there's great economic impact through local spending during these events in these facilities. So it's the old classic, build it and they will come. Doesn't always work that way, but you understand that logic. Heck, we can't even attract these things if we don't have a stadium, or arena, or a convention center. Therefore, we better build one so we can get in the game. It's very, very competitive out there because everybody knows the more things you attract to your city, the better it is. We have here in Tulsa, the Tulsa Sports Commission. That's what their job is. Part of Visit Tulsa, part of the Metro Chamber, and their whole people on staff that do nothing going out there trying to figure out ways and convince people to come to Tulsa to put on these events, whether it's Taekwondo or NCAA wrestling or gymnastics meet, or again, a youth soccer tournament. Those things are very, very important. So you got to have the facilities, the public facilities, and able to lure these kinds of events to your town. And if so, you have great economic impact from them being there. University venues, again, are public facilities if it's a public university, state dollars, but a lot of times even private facilities do this. Again, stadiums, arenas, not necessarily convention centers, but other kinds of arts and entertainment type facilities, theaters and things like that. And again, it's there for the student population, but again, they use them as marketing tools to attract athletes, to have a particular kind of program that then attracts other kinds of students that go to because they want a rich, full college or university experience. And so, again, can't have these kinds of programs without the facilities in which to host them, which is why, obviously, it sounds obvious to say, why colleges and universities are investing millions of dollars in these kinds of things, right? Other types of public facilities, these metropolitan areas like Madison Square Garden, Wells Fargo complex. The authors give us a couple examples there. These particular markets and these kinds of venues, a lot of times these touring kind of events, whether it's a motorcycle tour, a monster truck, or maybe it's a rodeo, or maybe it's a concert, these are deemed as sort of must play based on the size and potential audience, right? Markets where these guys have to come because they're very, very popular. I don't know if Tulsa exactly fits that bill of being a must play, but I also know the BOK Center has a great reputation, wins tons of awards, and people understand that for whatever reason, people in the Tulsa Metro support it and love to go to the BOK Center as part of the crown jewel in the city, and it has a great reputation. So a lot of people are saying, "Hey, we want to go play Tulsa because we know those people pay money and come out and see this. We've got a reputation for that." And so there are other markets like that across the country, but obviously you want to play big markets where you know that the size of your audience potential is very, very big. So they call them these sort of must play venues or must play markets, because you want to obviously increase your ticket sales. Now, promoters have to then guarantee, I won't get to the technical part of that, is that the way that you attract these events to come is you have to lay out guarantees, and then the burden goes on the promoter. They have to sell enough tickets and do enough to sort of make that guarantee to pay the artist or the event managers or the promoters to bring that event here. And obviously, the more leverage you have from an entertainment standpoint, the more you can ask for to say, yeah, I'll come play your market, but you got to pay me X, right? And that's the way it is with almost anything, the NCAA Final Four, right? Cities would love to host it, or even second and third rounds of the NCAA basketball tournament, right? Talking about March Madness. Well, why do these cities do this? Because they understand that there's great prestige in that, and they are going to sell a bunch of tickets, right? And so therefore the NCAA can say, okay, you want us to come play in your market? What are you going to do for us? What are you going to guarantee us? If you don't hit certain benchmarks, then you're not necessarily going to be in the running to get those events anymore. So there's a lot of pressure, downward pressure on arena managers, cities, people who work in that industry to be successful and have these things be successful. Skilled labor in metropolitan venues is almost always unionized. What does that mean? That you pay people that have bargained collectively to get paid certain minimum wage amounts and time, so that people who do these things don't get taken advantage of. Local civic centers, smaller cities have them. Again, even small cities want in on the game, and so they might not be building a 20,000 seat arena, but they might be building a 2,500 seat arena. And what do you do in a 2,500 seat arena? Well, you attract the kind of events that come in a 2,500 seat arena. Still important for a market. Still love to have things come to town. There's plenty of events out there that don't need to be playing in a 20,000 seat arena, can't pay the rent, can't fill it anyway. So they go to these smaller markets. Minor league hockey teams play in smaller markets, minor league baseball teams play in these smaller markets. Still got to have a stadium, still got to have an arena, just don't need one that's 20,000 seats, right? Here's the types of things that are, of course, hosted. Won't spend a whole lot of time on this because I think you guys understand. But again, when you're trying to get creative and fill dates, and you've got all these things that tour out there and you want to fill these dates, these are the kinds of things that come. Family shows, obviously music concerts, different kinds of multi-day trade shows. Gosh, whether it be, I don't know, a gun show, a jewelry show, a dog show, there could be lots of things. Massive worship events that are religious events, revivals, different kind of special events that play in these kinds of arenas. Convocations, graduations are huge, of course, big money makers for arenas when you have to have high schools or big colleges that need to rent these places to hold their graduation celebrations. Summer tours, holiday shows. Again, we have things that come into town just around Christmas or just around the summer. And so there's many, many types of events. Think about, you can go on the website right now, the BOK Center, and sort of look at all the different kinds of events they get. ideally want to fill up dates that are most lucrative. That's why concerts are very, very popular, harder to get, but also very, very popular. They do well and they can make you a lot of money. Some of the other shows they bring are a little more risky, for lack of a better term. But think about what all that pressure is on everybody. Again, we want to be entertained. If we're going to come, we're going to go to that motorcycle show, we're going to go to that dog show, we're going to go to whatever. You're going to take your kid, you're going to go to a volleyball tournament in Tulsa. You better make sure that everything in that city is good. There's people that do this. Is my hotel good? Is transportation easy? Are there restaurants close by? Is the facility nice? Are the bathrooms clean? Think about all these things you got to think about if you're the host city and you're bringing people in town, because again, you want a good reputation so that those people will come back. How are these things built? Facility financing, federal government loans, um, different programs, tax exemptions. We'll talk about bonds here in a second. Public and private financing. These days, almost every facility, not just convention centers, but stadiums, arenas are a combination of this public and private financing, right? That's the most common, where you're taking some tax dollars, public dollars, combined with some private dollars, owners who put money into it to build something. And then there's obviously a business exchange there when that happens, but there are different ways to finance things, which we'll talk about. But almost this is the primary model. Almost every facility in the country is built on some sort of combination of public-private financing. Not all of them, but most of them. Some are completely publicly funded, some are completely privately funded. It just depends on where the appetite lies. But ideally, if you're an owner, you want some public money in there so you don't have to write the check yourself. Vice versa, if you're the city, you don't want to have to necessarily foot the bill. If an owner comes into town and isn't successful, has no skin in the game, maybe they'd leave or shut down because there's nothing to lose. So, you want people that are taking some of that risk on themselves, and whatever that combination is just determined on negotiations. Bonds. So what are bonds? You've heard maybe about bonds. Bonds is essentially just a way that a mechanism for a lot of cash to come in early that you have to pay back over time. So and when bonds are issued, and typically they're backed by city governments because you have a better deal, they're less risky, even though the return is there. So what happens is you're trying to get a lot of cash, you'll issue X number of bonds, or people buy for a certain price. Over time, the bond will mature. So if I'm a bond holder, when it comes to maturity, depending on how it's sold to me, when 20 years is up, I ideally get my initial investment back plus a percentage in interest that I've earned to make more money than I put in, just like any other type of investment. I buy a bond for $1, I hold on to it for 20 years, and then they pay me back my dollar plus 5 extra cents or 20 cents or whatever it is I make. So you put that on scale. I only own one bond, but maybe I'll buy 10 of these. Maybe I'll buy 50 of this. How much of the bonds cost me depends on how much money they're trying to raise, how much they think they can raise. So it's just a way, as a funding mechanism, where they can get influx of cash to build a facility, and then they pay that money back over time to the bondholders, right? And again, you might get a lower return on investment, but also it's lower risk. The higher potential return on investment, the higher the risk, right? So this talks about different kinds of bonds that can be sold. Taxable bonds issued by private entities, private placement bonds are asset-backed bonds. Both of these bonds are sold by the team, but private placement bonds provide a lien on future generated revenue by the team. In other words, they'll money that the city helps issue the bond and back the bond will put a lien on future revenues that the teams will generate to help pay that sum of money. So you can't just go in there scot-free, right? They're gonna get a piece of whatever revenue is bought in by the teams that are playing in the arena or the stadium that was built by this money that was generated from bond issuing, right? So it's a little technical, a little dry, but just understand that it's a good mechanism to generate a lot of cash early. So our TIFs, what we call tax increment financing, take it where an arena is going to be built, you draw a border, and within that border, tax base is frozen, and any extra taxes that are generated within that border are going to repay these TIF bonds. Again, bonds are issued, cash comes in, we make that money back by raising a little bit of tax in a certain area, and all the money that's generated within these boundaries goes back to pay these TIF bonds. Very, 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 very popular way of generating cash to build facilities this way. Again, facility financing mechanisms, tax revenues. How do cities, counties generate revenue to do the things that we want cities and counties to do? Make our roads better, pay for public schools, all the things that we know that cities do for us in terms of the services. They need revenue to do that, right? Where does the revenue come from? Us, when we buy things, depending on what city we live in, tax rates and everything we get taxed on. So there's certain kinds, but every one of these things requires taxes to get built. Hard taxes are things that we pay money on for local income tax, real estate taxes when there's transaction, personal property taxes are high, general sales taxes. Typically voters have to approve to be taxed. If you're going to take money from me from things I buy, we have to vote on that. Lots of tax increases have been disapproved in Oklahoma City. These things are called metropolitan area projects. These penny sales tax have been going on since the 90s when I ran. There's been 4 rounds of them, and the voters over there continue to approve them. And a lot of what you see in terms of the development in Oklahoma City and in Tulsa, Vision 2025 were developed from these kinds of things. Voters had to vote on them to allow themselves to be taxed. And they do that because, again, they know they need revenue to have these kinds of things. Other, what they call soft taxes, might come from, or what they call maybe sin tax here. Taxes to renting cars, taxis, ride shares, hotels, motels, restaurants, and affects how much smaller portion of taxpayers make it easier to levy. In other words, these kinds of things aren't levied to the wider base like an income tax or real estate or personal property tax is. These are a smaller group, and so therefore it's easy for them to say, yeah, let's go ahead and pass those taxes because it doesn't affect me. It only affects certain people that take part in these kinds of things and use them. A lot of times those are people that are traveling in out of town, don't live in the market and go home. That's why you see high tax rates on your hotel bills when you travel, or your taxi service or rideshare services, or different things when you're there. Tax rates are different because you're a visitor, right? You're going to go back home. They're going to get the money from you while you're in town. That's why the tax rates are higher. But again, all of these taxes are ways to generate revenue to do the things we want to do in markets that we need our governments to do. And sometimes, obviously, they're used to build facilities. That's what we're talking about in this chapter. This is a slide that talks about just that sometimes private money is put in, right? Ways to gain private funding for a facility project might include selling naming rights to a stadium or a part of a stadium. You might get somebody to pay you for the rights to sell food and beverage in your facility. That's where money can come in. You get people to pay a luxury suite, pay for a luxury suite, then they got to pay for the tickets on top of that. Other types of premium seating, advertising rights. A lot of times when a facility is being built, part of the capital stack or what you're going to show in terms of how the money is coming in, you're going to say, look, we're going to sell naming rights to this arena. We think it's worth $20 million for a 20-year term, and we'll sell that. And that's some of that money that will come in. So you can count on that money coming in. As this example shows here, the University of Maryland had a 25-year agreement with Comcast Cable for naming rights to their basketball arena, right? And then private donors to universities also provide funding and have their names placed on the new facilities. That's why you have the Case Athletic Complex or the Donald W. Reynolds Arena. I mean, this money comes from private financing, and one of the privileges and benefits you get, if you want one, is when you give that money, you can put your name on a building. And again, to reemphasize, opportunities are available to combine private and public funding and to build a new facility. This is the most common way new facilities are funded and built. Denver voters approved subsidized $300 million for the construction of the Broncos' new stadium, while the ownership only provided $100 million. Here's a stat I provided because of recent developments in Oklahoma City with the Thunder's new arena. Now, there were no new taxes raised. There was just an extension of money that had already been voted on by the voters and approved to collect. So what they said is, okay, we're going to build a $1 billion arena, and we need this penny tax to be collected between extended to when it was supposed to sunset for another X amount of years, really until 2050, so that we get enough money in here to build this new arena so we can keep the Thunder here. The ownership group, all of them multi-millionaires, sometimes billionaires, only are putting in $50 million. And of course, when they get the arena, they'll run it like they own it. It's just the way it is, right? And people in Oklahoma City thought, we love the Thunder, gives us great pride, makes us a major league city. We don't even want to think about them moving. Not that that was necessarily any of that was covered or even threatened, but it would pass with 71% of the vote. So $1 billion arena is going to be built in Oklahoma City for the Thunder play there and keep them there through at least 2050. And again, that's from tax dollars coming from this penny sales tax, and then a little bit of private money. And again, this is the most common way that facilities are subsidized or financed. And why do they do it? We talked about it a little bit. I always talk about how many jobs you're going to create, not only construction jobs, but other jobs, because you have to hire people to work at the arena, all kinds of jobs. You go to an arena, there's ushers and ticket takers and food and beverage workers and wait staff and all that provides jobs. That's always a big thing. You know, cities are always looking for ways to provide more people with jobs. People who attend the games or work for the team generate new spending in the community. Again, new spending, taxes on top of that, more money, more revenue coming into a city. Team attracts tourists and companies to host the city for sure. Thunder have really raised the bar for Oklahoma City and made it created the atmosphere that, hey, maybe that's a place we want to do business. So businesses move into town, people come tour the city. It's good for business, and therefore they figure, again, we're going to make an investment. If we build it and we do what we say, people will come. It'll pay for itself over and over again and help us grow and be the city we want, the city that we want. And this new spending, when people come to visit or new businesses come to town or people move here because they have to live here to work for the team or work in the arena, there's this multiplier effect. So these dollars get spent over and over again, and increases the local income, causes more new spending and new job creation, which is what you want, an engine to create more of that. Is there a place where you can figure out we've had enough? Probably. There are plenty of markets that, hey, we don't want to be bigger. We like the size where we are. But for the most part, people who work in government, people do these things are always about growth, right? We're Americans with this sort of growth mindset. That's the way it is here. We want more people, more money to do more things. Ideally, if it's spent right, is to do what? Make our lives better. Doesn't always happen. Doesn't always work. Not everything's successful, but the best efforts and the best goals in mind, that's what they're there to do. The authors are telling us here, though, that it doesn't always do what they say it's going to do, right? Benefits of building stadiums have proven out over the years they don't always do what they say they're going to, but they continue getting built. I think there's a psychological effect there that's positive. Maybe if there's not an economic impact that's fully realized, there are a lot of people that understand this now, so they might be more resistant. Those in power to say, you know what, I know it all sounds good, and you're telling us all these good things, but we know the data shows that if we invest all this money in here, we might not necessarily make our money back, right? And this is what the authors are telling us here. That there maybe is an extremely small effect on the economic activity once you do these things. Maybe sports facilities don't really attract tourists or new industry. I think that they do, but maybe not as great an impact as maybe the proponents trying to get the dollars built say they're going to. Professional sport team creates a public good. I definitely think it does. I mean, we can think of plenty of cases. Obviously, if the team is winning or represents a market in a certain way that brings pride, that's definitely a good thing, but doesn't always do that. And so again, what the authors are telling us here is that there are plenty of examples where what was promised or what was projected for an arena to do doesn't see that kind of return. Again, facility ownership and management staff. Facility ownership usually falls into these particular categories, usually by a community or state or municipality, a county, maybe the state. Lots of regulations and things in place, because ideally, what are the regulations supposed to do? Protect our dollars, essentially. They want to make sure that they can't be accused of spending the public's money in a reckless way. So anytime anybody wants to do this, they want like tight control over this, because again, it's important for lots and lots of reasons to get it right. And therefore you got to sort of jump through a lot of hoops. Colleges funding is based on continued student growth, from tuition, gifts from donors, other institutional subsidies, and then private facilities. Motive is solely for profit, right? Okay, I'll put up the money, but I'm doing it as I would any other investment, because if I put up $1, I plan to make 4 back, whatever the ratio is that they think. And what's the goal of this management staff? Again, if we're talking about marketing communications, what we're trying to market to our potential buyers, and what we're trying to communicate to people is our facility, and when we build these things, are going to do great things for you and improve your life. And here's all the way that's going to happen. When it all boils down, what story they're trying to tell, right? Therefore, if that's going to actually be the case, and once it's done, what you have to do is provide that experience where people have a good time, want to come back, and it becomes a source of pride. There's art and science in that. You have to provide a clean, safe, comfortable environment for people who come to your facility, have a good time. There's so many moving parts in that. But think about the impact of that. If the stadium's falling down, or people are rude, or the events aren't very fun, or the team's terrible, all of that has effect negatively on your bottom line. Therefore, you got to work hard and invest time and energy and money to make sure that that doesn't happen. That's what we in the business do all the time, every day. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't. Some things we can control, and some things we can't. But what's the goal, right? Hey, we want to provide an experience, and therefore an arena where you feel comfortable coming to. You have to worry about certain things when you get here. You're going to have a good time, you're going to be comfortable, and you're going to be safe. So here's some other sort of functions of management staff, right? Think about all this. Security. We talked about you need to be safe. You better have good security presence, a way to make sure that people, when they're coming, are safe. You want to make sure you're in a clean environment. You want to make sure you have people on staff that, again, can tell the right stories, deliver the right messages, and sell those tickets, and sell that merchandise, and sell those food and beverage. To bring anybody into the arena, you better have people that know how to schedule and book events, and the right kind of events at the right time, and pay the right money so that you fill up dates. And then once you fill up dates, you got to have people on staff that know how to pull it off, right? How do we put a basketball court arena together? How do we convert from basketball into hockey? How do we convert, this concert requires that kind of configuration to set up? We need pros that know how to do that, right? And then once we get things booked, you need people to promote them and sell tickets, people to manage the books, and people to work the box office where people come buy tickets. Private management. Here's a couple of groups. Oaktree Group. That's the new group. They're a monster. Look them up. They're taking over the industry. They're the new managers at the BOK Center. It used to be ASM Global. ASM Global is still over the Paycom Center. But again, these are two examples of third-party private management companies that they're experts in what they do. So they pull together all their best practices. We'll come manage your facility for a fee. Here's how we make money. But here's how we're going to guarantee you the city makes money, and we'll come manage it for you because we have the expertise. We know how to bring events. We know how to run an arena. We know we have highly specialized and trained professionals that do this stuff for you. So we've got it, city. You don't need to worry about pay us to do it. Here's how you'll make money. Here's how we'll make money. We're good. That's the majority of how these things are done. And then a lot of times what they end up doing is buying other parts that go into facility management, right? Most of these things are all third-party, different organizations run them. So you might have one company in an arena managing it, but a completely different company that does the ticket sales operation. Well, a lot of times then the arena manager said, hey, we want our own ticket sales operation. Let's either buy that and acquire them, that become part of our family, or we'll start our own group. The next arena we move into, we'll have our own ticketing system as opposed to hiring Pacquiao or Ovations. Or Ovations is a group that does concessions. Well, we want our own concessions. So let's buy Ovations or tell Ovations to go away, and we'll start our own food and beverage, right? What's the idea? You're cutting out the middleman. Ideally, you get more direct control of the revenue coming in. Now, there's investment in that. You have to pay the staff. You have to do everything to manage it. But ideally, if you're controlling it, and you put the money into it, you get also the returns. So a lot of these facility management companies are sort of buying up or acquiring or building their own other departments that touch every part of running a facility. Got to market it. Doesn't do any good to obviously put teams in here or concerts or any other type of events. You don't have no people that know how to get the word out there. So you've got to bring the kind of events and tell the right messages to sort of speak to your community. Um, obviously the internet's a lot easier to book events and buy tickets to events. Online tools can help us do that. Sometimes you run into a situation where maybe there's too many facilities, too many venues in a market. They start to cannibalize each other. It can get really, really competitive and cutthroat, and then sometimes they don't all survive. There's a fine balance there, and ideally, you're in a market that can service all types of events and all different kind of potential capacities. Right? You've got the facility where you can go see a concert for 200 people. We can go see a concert for 2,500 people, or we can go see an arena concert or a stadium concert for bigger, or even a sporting event. Hey, we're going to go see a small sporting event or a large. Ideally, you're in markets that have enough variety of capacities of types of facilities where your market can attract almost anything because you can accommodate almost anything. But sometimes you can have too many of the same size and type, and then they compete, and that's not good. Local economy can be a driving force for ticket sales. Clearly, if the local economy is doing well, you're more likely to have people flush with disposable income or expendable income where they can buy tickets. And so healthy economy is good for everything. But obviously, if you're going to have people who can spend their hard-earned dollars paying for entertainment, you need your local economy to be strong. Again, got to promote it. Similar to marketing, right? Ideally, this is different though. The promotion team is out there selling the arena itself, not the events once the arena is opened, right? You need people out there basically talking to different people looking for places to play and saying, hey, come to us. Let's promote our arena. So we can talk about rental agreements or different kinds of things you get if you bring your event to us. If you bring your event to this particular facility, here's what you're going to get, right? Majority of the shows are brought by outside companies. Here's these groups again: Live Nation, which is really again Oakview Group now. Feld is the one that does a lot of the family shows like Disney and Disney on Ice, Circus they used to do. These outside companies are their own promoters, and then they go look for arenas to play in. So you have the arena promoters, and then you have the show promoters, and they get together and figure out if we're going to do a deal and bring whether we're going to bring something to your town or we're the town that's going to get to host what you do. So you have promoters on both sides. What are some revenues and expenses, right? How do facilities generate revenue? Portions of ticket sales, clearly, and fees that we pay to buy tickets. Again, we talked about luxury suites and club seats, concessions, parking, arena sponsorships, renting of the arena for people that want to rent the arena for a graduation or for a religious show. So, okay, that's money coming in. What's money going out? You got to pay off the loan. You got to pay off the mortgage on the thing. If the bank's involved, obviously you got to make sure your facility's in good shape. So you got to have money to make sure that you fix things and make it modern or upgrade it when you need to. Obviously, you got to be able to pay your utilities, your taxes, your insurance. You got to pay your staff. A lot of times, rightly so, one of your biggest line items is just your payroll, right? People that work for you. We're selling tickets here. Again, this may be different outside, but you're going to sell a ton of tickets here, as this talks about, because you get a percentage of the revenues and you get surcharges on tickets that go to facility. That's why you see these little surcharges or ticket facility or whatever when you buy a ticket. Hey, I thought it was $10 and you end up paying 20. Well, there's lots of charges because people are taking money and they got to get paid. Other revenue, again, food and beverage, parking, sponsorships. Sometimes profits from other shows are put aside to invest in future programs. So if you make a ton of money off a concert, you might build a rainy day fund to help you promote other things that need a little more support. Want a job in the industry can be exciting, a lot of hard work, a lot of crazy hours, but you're close to the action. Here's a sort of different lineup of different kinds of things. There are obviously more jobs that you can have than this when you're looking for a career in the facility management or facility marketing. Marketing directors, general manager, they can put on here, you'd be general manager of a place, basically the boss running the whole arena. You need public and media relations directors, communications professionals, people that know how to run events once you get them here, people that know how to, again, set up the building in the proper way, people that are out there figure out a way to talk to the promoters and book events here, people that work the box office to sell tickets to the general public, people who sell the sponsorships, and then people to make sure everything's communicating and all your IT and tech and your jumbotrons and your Wi-Fi systems are working. And there's other jobs within here and other people in these departments, but lots of careers to be had in the facility. The good about working facility, depending on when you work, is you see a lot of concerts. Now you're working, so it's not like you're sitting there watching a concert or a show, but again, you're part of the action and you work crazy hours, but you do get to experience a lot of fun and entertaining things in your market. If you work for a team, you're just working when your team is in a particular facility, but it's the same kind of thing. You have similar positions, right? Similar jobs. Some of the current issues obviously are safety with, gosh, really negative, bad things we can think about, people who want to do bad to people, whether it be active shooters or terrorists or bombers or every facility and arena will have a safety protocol plan and a crisis management plan. Related to that is you want to make sure that, again, when we want to feel safe, that when we go to a place, there's enough security there so that nobody gets hurt. So there are ways to set it up with the arena itself in terms of a physical way, but as well as with personnel. How do you crowd management? Again, ingress, people coming in, and egress, people leaving. Flow of traffic, foot traffic, pedestrian traffic around the arena. People want to feel comfortable. God forbid they need to clear out because of a fire or something. How do you do that? So all that stuff that you see when you go to arenas, all this really has to do mostly for keeping us safe and so they don't get sued. The security is a big one. A lot of people want to make sure they're building arenas that don't have a huge negative impact on the environment. They need to be sustainable. They need to make sure the carbon footprint is small. Look at Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle, built by Populous, and it's sort of the gold standard. But people take this stuff seriously now, and so one of the issues when you're building a new arena or considering it is how environmentally friendly can we be? How sustainable? What can we do to lower our carbon footprint? So there are lots of these people that are professionals that know exactly how do we reclaim water, how do we reduce energy output or energy use consumption, right? Because again, not only is it the right thing to do, in my opinion, it's the right business thing to do. You got to make it financial sense. You got to put some incentives in there to do it. That's why you work with governments that say the greener you are, the maybe the better tax rates you get, the maybe better rebates you get. So there's got to be a win-win-win all around for people to do. Otherwise, they wouldn't. So, but some people's like, no, it's the right thing to do, and maybe we've got to pass on costs a little bit. So that future generations can enjoy what we're doing. Let's plan for that now by making sure we're building facilities that are sustainable and reduce waste and cut energy use and all those things that are important for our future as a species and a planet. I work on a lot of this stuff on an everyday basis, and it's an issue where what you want to build an arena or a stadium, but you want to do it not as a standalone thing. You want to build it as part of what we call these entertainment districts, so that it's a hub to attract people in. I watched the English Premier League a lot. And this weekend they were all in Nashville, and that's what they essentially did. There's an entertainment district where people come down, and Nashville's entertainment capital, and lots of people go there for that. So we understand that. But some of these other cities are like, hey, if we're going to build a stadium, great, but let's put it as part of something that attracts people not only that live here, but maybe out of town to come in because, hey, you're coming to an arena or a stadium, but around that, we've got bars and restaurants and music, and we've got public parks and spaces where everybody can go down to, again, I keep using Oklahoma City, go down to see what's happening in Oklahoma City, close to the Paycom Center and the park and everything that's going around there, part of these districts. And you can have more than one. Tulsa has them, right? You've got the Arts District, you've got the East Village, you've got Cherry Street, you've got Utica Square. They weren't necessarily built that, they turned into that, but people are thinking that way. So when you're going to build a new facility, or if your one's in existence, well, maybe you want to develop around there so that you have these entertainment districts where people can go down there, park once, and there's all kinds of options and things you can do. You concentrate people in an area, you control things better. And again, what are we doing it? Entertainment. There we go. Improving the quality of life. Hey, I live in a town where I can go down to the entertainment district. And when I go to see a ball game, when I'm done, I'm going to go over to this bar because it's a lot of fun. Or even when there's not a game going on, I go down there because there's a lot of energy and buzz. And people, love to be part of something that's exciting like that. So it's not just about putting up the money to build a facility. It's putting up the money to build the facility and develop the area around it for commercial development, for residential development, for office development. So you create these districts, and when you do that, you can share a lot of these costs, economies of scale you can get into. But look at all the different things you want to do. You got to build a hotel, different shops. People can office down there and stay close, right? How do we get people down there? Trains, right? Is there a train that passes by? Is there bus routes that we add to it, right? All this can help the team achieve greater long-term financial success. And what this is saying is, all right, well, I'll put up the money for a stadium, but I also want to I want to be the one that gets to control the area of the land around it for development. So yeah, I'll put the money in for the stadium, but I want more than that. I'm going to put up extra money, or I want at control of developing the land around it, because I want other sources of revenue coming in that aren't specifically tied to just whatever we're doing in an arena. Obviously, a lot more money has to be put up front to be able to build these kinds of districts. But again, people with money and foresight and long-term planning understand that it's better not to just control the arena, but it's better to control the area around it as well. And this is always an issue, I talk about it a lot, and you want to make sure that when you're building new facilities, new arenas, you want to market to people with different abilities and disabilities to come. So you have to make it comfortable. Then again, it's the right thing to do. It's also the law in a lot of places. So as these things get built, you want to make sure that you're can accommodate people with different abilities and disabilities, whether they be intellectual, developmental disabilities, or physical disabilities, right? That's why we see a lot of this stuff. I think the current law is you have to have at least 1% of all seating price ranges available for handicap seating. That's just one example. I think I told you guys a story when I was in England. I went to Watford, and they had a whole section that was for people with sensory integration, or were on the autism spectrum, where they can go there and have an area where they can get away and their loved ones can get away. So again, the more we can accommodate varieties of people, again, as a marketing tool and here's communication, here's what we believe in, this is what we think is right, there's a value to that. Hopefully that resonates with certain people, that again causes them to take action or feel good about supporting whatever these owners or whatever the city or whatever the arena is doing. So these are issues that make a difference. Again, arguing that most of the time, the right thing to do is also the best business thing to do. Just like with Romans and Greeks and people ancient all the way up to modern times, these things are areas for people to congregate for entertainment, social, and business purposes. Still the same today. But again, why is any of that important? You guys have heard me say it a million times. Facilities range from stadiums to arenas, convention centers, and theaters, and challenges for owners and managers that are renovating or upgrading or building new is retaining the revenue generated by the facility and the area around it, by preparing fully integrated security programs, retaining tenants, people who come and rent the place or use it as home, and addressing different American Disabilities Act requirements to make sure that you're providing a facility and arena for people of all abilities, right? So again, very, very important arenas for quality of life. Arenas and stadiums themselves are marketing tools for the teams and for the cities, and they communicate values and what you believe in. And there are communication professionals out there telling the story to try to get these things built and supported. Ultimately, again, so we have a good time when we go down there, and our lives are better for it. Okay, remember, I will place everything. If you found this, it's in module two. But moving forward, we're going to put all the assignments and videos in the module 2 folder. So as always, if you have any questions, text me, email me, reach out to me. And until the next time, we'll see you. Okay.